Well, welcome to the Node.js uvwasi team meeting for June 3rd, 2024. We'll follow the standard approach of going through the items that were tagged in the agenda that was created in issue number 274. So before we get going, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share?
I think the only announcement is that the WASI group voted to do every other monthly releases of the specification. So we should see minor releases and there's actually specific days that they'll be released, so none of it's a surprise. But expect releases of the specification, which can maybe help us better figure out how we want to organize our work.
Okay. I'm going to say, okay, if those were all the announcements, I'm just going to look at the issues. So I think the first one, the FD reader, I don't think there's anything new to sort of update on that. What's new with WASI? I don't know if anybody has anything they want to share in terms of or so what's new in uvwasi, if there's anything going on in the uvwasi side that people wanted to mention, or
It's been nice to see the steady work on PRs to the project. We've got a contributor that's been posting some really great fixes. So nice to see that the preview one implementation is being maintained well. On the preview two side, uh, I don't have a huge amount of updates to give on the Jquery project. I think one of the one of the big things that's coming up at the moment is the async support and supporting async APIs in the browser from WASM using the JSPI integration for WASM, which is starting to ship now. And so that's one of the major themes because obviously when you're writing WASM apps in the browser, you can't necessarily always rely on polling. And so to be able to have first-class promises integration for imported functions and native support for that in browsers is something we want to build on in Jcode. And so there's ongoing design work happening there. So if anyone's interested in async, we do have a Jcode meeting, which is the sort of preview to polyfill project. And that is every second Monday. And that's a Bytecode Alliance meeting within the Bytecode Alliance project. And there's also Jco on Zulip if anyone's interested in getting involved in those discussions, because those design discussions are active right now. And using the basis of JSPI and async support to get to supporting first-class async in the component model, which is now a specified feature in the component model, and implementations are starting to pick up on that. So it'll be a slow kind of implementation process as implementers dig into the details of the proposals. But that's the current kind of theme, other than the current release cadence on the preview 2. On the WASI proposal side, there are also discussions around supporting more browser APIs and things like that, which are also happening in a Jquery context, to be able to have more web IDL bindings and that kind of thing. So again, if anyone's interested in those discussions, they're also happening within the Jquery project meetings. I can post the link after this to add it to the notes as well. And if you want to dig into any of those in more detail, I'm happy to do that as well.
okay, so yeah, it sounds like things are progressing along in the preview 2 world. That takes us to the end of the things that were tagged for the agenda. I don't know if there's any other topics or things we should dive into this week.
I think the only question I have, since we haven't met in a while, is mostly do we have some semblance of our preview 2 plan? Is the plan right now mostly just to okay, let's get everything implemented in Jco, feel really confident that we know exactly how this is going to work, and then start figuring out how we want to ship those either via uvwasi directly or via just pure JavaScript APIs. I don't remember if we had a particular plan for that.
I think from my understanding, and I could let Guy answer too, but like we don't really have anybody volunteering or with cycles to start a preview 2 implementation in uvwasi in earnest. So we were like, yeah, we've got an implementation. People, if you want to use Node with preview 2, you can go to Jco. It'll do what you need. And at some point in the future, you know, if and when we get cycles, then we can look at the optimization effort where we would say like, okay, by lowering things into Node itself, we can make these key things better and faster.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I don't know, Guy, if that still matches your view on how things will roll out, but
Yeah, I think the easiest path is probably still upstreaming a dependency on Jcode to be able to provide and explore what the node.js APIs for preview 2 might look like. Because otherwise it's a huge amount of work to work through all of the bind gen and handling. So it still might be a good first step to be able to then, as cycles are available, optimize through further from. Because there is still a public API design question there, I think, a little bit in Node, which we could sort of start to answer. I think obviously the question there is one of support and how we are going to, if we do make Jco a dependency at any point, you know, how that decision is made.
be back in 1 sec, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so, but it would provide the easiest path because in theory, it could be a very straightforward integration to be able to provide the preview 2 usage through the existing WASI module APIs. So yeah, that's something we should discuss in this group and come to consensus on, and if we want to go down that path at any point. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I think that's a good idea. I think maybe we should add it to the agenda for the next meeting so that way folks know that that's a conversation that we want to have, because I think that makes sense. And I think also just trying to paint the picture of what uvwasi wants to be responsible for, because I can totally see us saying, okay, let's add a dependency on Jco for the main APIs. And then for some of them, like for example, file system, we say, okay, we're going to provide that interface via uvwasi, and so go from there so that we have a roadmap of the things that we want to lower into.
Yeah, 100%. There should be some strategy already in place of, because if we just upstream Jco, obviously the uvwasi isn't being used at all for preview 2, and so then what does that path look like for doing, and there's the low level bind gen in Jco, which was sort of trying to also provide some kind of path to that as well. So figuring out those questions and what it means for uvwasi is definitely an important discussion to have.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think questions that would have to be answered to like make the proposal to add it as dependency is sort of like, what's being gained by adding it as a dependency versus just having people use it as today, and who's volunteering to make sure that if we do that, we need it to be sort of maintained, some comfort that it's going to be maintained, right? Because it's now something that's more formally part of Node itself.
Mm-hmm. Which Michael, I don't know if that's something you might want to look into, but I think given that what we just said, I think this group is largely concerned about WASI in Node. And that extends a little beyond just uvwasi. So I don't know if it makes sense to just straight up call it, hey, we're actually just going to be the WASI group, which also encompasses uvwasi and related things like integrating Jaco or something like that.
I think we've been kind of operating that way. So like renaming the repo doesn't necessarily make sense because
Oh,
this
not
is
the repository.
WASI. Yeah. And so I wouldn't say, yeah, I'm comfortable with this being sort of the WASI team, the place where people are interested, you know, discuss the different issues.
Mhm.
And it might be a little odd to be tied to like a repo that has uvwasi in the name, but I would say let's just keep doing that until there's actually a reason to not.
For sure.
So it sounds like the suggestion was like to add an issue in the repo, which is tagged for the agenda, so it'll show up in the agenda for next week.
Yes.
With sort of the main points that we should chat about. Is it Oscar? Are you gonna create that or?
Yeah, I can create the issue.
Sounds good. Okay, any other topics we should talk about? Okay, well,
That's good.
if not,
Yeah, it'd be great to have that discussion and make a few more folks aware that will be on our agenda for next time. So
yeah, we could potentially, yeah. Do you have people in mind or?
yeah, I can let folks involved in the Jaco project know about the discussion and maybe we can discuss some of that in the upcoming Jaco meetings as well. So,
Okay, sounds good.
great.
Okay, well, if that's it, then thanks for your time and thanks for everybody who's watching the live stream. We'll see everybody in GitHub and next meeting. Thanks. Okay, bye.